What's going on, everybody? This is Chris Carter with GU Mentality Podcast. I'm here with Mr. Emery Glover, but before we get started, you know what we got to do. Cue the intro. All right. What's going on, Mr. Glover?
Hey, what's going on, man? How you doing?
All right, I tell you, our history dates back. I came into Orangeburg. You saw me when I first came into Orangeburg over at Lake Marion, and you saw me when I transitioned over to Edisto. So you've kind of followed my journey, but I also had the opportunity to watch you on your journey as you kind of progress through the ranks of journalism. And I just wanted to bring you on the GU Mentality Podcast because I think you have an interesting story. I know you got a story to tell. But before I get started, I want you to I want to know a little bit more about you and why you got into journalism.
I grew up in St. Matthews, South Carolina, man. Small town, 2-3 traffic lights. One of those places where if like you drive through and you blink, you practically miss it. I love sports. Love watching basketball, love watching football. I was even in baseball for a little while. I always wanted to be an athlete. But, my mom, she was always, she was, real level headed. She was like, I understand you want to be an athlete, but you need to have a backup plan. So my backup plan was if I can't be an athlete, I'll write about them. I can't be in the game, but I can be at the game, which was just as good for me. So, I started taking a lot of different writing courses and doing some different camps and stuff that that would kind of get me better at writing and just learning how to be a better writer, a creative writer. And through that process, my mom told me, she's like, when you start looking at colleges, I want you to go ahead and figure out what you want to major in first. Because, once you get in college, once you declare your major, that's it. Like, there ain't no going back. We're not going to have you changing majors. You're not going to be in there 6-7 years trying to figure out what you want to do with your life. And so I decided I wanted to be a journalist. So we looked into all of those programs and took classes and all of this other stuff. And before you knew it, I was at Winthrop University taking classes, learning how to be a reporter.
I know she talked about the journalism and stuff, but was she the biggest influence on you as far as going into journalism?
I would say to an extent, my mom is a teacher. So, she teaches in St. Matthews. And I never had it for any classes, but she was always pushing me to go out and just try to find what fit me. And one of my passions was just writing, and she knew that. So she was like, "I'm gonna put you in a spot where you can thrive in that environment." So that's where the camps came in. That's where the workshops came in. That's where going to the journalism classes came in. All of these different things. Like she put me in a lot of different spots to be able to kind of flourish in that situation.
Like, what were some of your early writings? I know you said sports, but what were some of your other writings that you would write about back then?
Well, most of the stuff that I did, we had a journalism newsletter in middle school. It wasn't really much, we didn't go around interviewing people. It was just more like what's going on around school. It was, hey, the PTSA is having a meeting on such and such date. This is what's going to happen at the meeting. Tell your parents to be there. It wasn't anything hard hitting, obviously, because I was in 7th grade. We weren't going around interviewing folks or anything. I think my first real encounter with journalism, real journalism, came I want to say that was my sophomore year at Calhoun County High, and I had Rowena Lodehope. And she was like, anybody who's ever gone to Calhoun County can tell you. Yeah, or anybody that's ever taken her class can tell you, she doesn't mess around. Yeah. And so, she had us pick our beats and go out and do interviews and take pictures and do all of this. We literally, the class was laid out almost like a newsroom. So it was there were certain people that would lay out the newspaper. There were certain people that would go out and write the stories. There were copy editors. There were people that went out and, there were a lot of different things. The only thing we didn't do was sell advertisements. Honestly. But it worked, you know what I'm saying? You kind of got a slight glimpse at what a newsroom worked like. So, I mean, between that and like you said, like just going back to the camps that I was talking about earlier, like one of my middle school camps that I went to, it wasn't even a journalism camp. It was really just a creative writing camp. Like we would go back and we would kind of like put ourselves in like different eras of time, and we would like create characters and talk about some of the things that, those characters went through. And we put together a book, and at the end of the camp, we all got that book, and each one of our stories was in that book. So little things like that was some of the things that kind of helped me along the way.
So as you're progressing through high school and you're, taking the creative writing class and then graduate, now, did you get a scholarship to go off to school because of your writing, or what?
Well, here's the thing, like I didn't get a scholarship for my writing. I did get the life scholarship. I was one of the top folks in my class. But for me, like I think my issue was, and I think this is the thing that I always tell folks, like when you're going out and you're applying for these colleges and these universities, man, like don't slack up. Like know that there's money out there to be had in terms of these scholarships. And for me, like I had the life scholarship, and there were a couple other scholarships that I'd gone after, but I didn't get. But I mean, it was more or less me being discouraged not getting those scholarships that made me say, okay, I'm not going to apply for anymore, because I didn't want to deal with the rejection. But there was so much that was out there, and and there's so many different opportunities that me personally I could have had as a journalist or going into journalism programs if I had applied myself just a little more. Not that Winthrop University is not a great school, because it is. It's by far one of the best in the state, if not in the country. Mm-hmm. But the thing about it was, there were so many different opportunities that I could have taken advantage of if I would have just applied myself a little more, if I would have written an essay, if I would have applied myself a little harder on the SAT, if I'd have done, small things in the classroom. Those opportunities were there. It's just, I took it seriously, but I could have probably done a little more.
You said something about discouragement. Was that as far as I guess, applying for the scholarships and people telling you no, or was it that you felt like you wouldn't qualify for them? Like,
it was a little of both. I mean, honestly, like there were instances where I had applied for scholarships and like I was told like right out of the gate, like, no, you don't apply for this. Like you don't qualify for this. And then there were instances where I was like, well, I would think that I would apply. I would apply for something. And it turned out that I didn't even fit the qualifications. So there were instances where I would just kind of brush over and glance over certain scholarships, and I would see them, but I would just be like, nah, I don't think I fit that. And quite honestly, I probably would have. I just didn't apply for it. It's one of those things you kind of talk yourself out of it. When you really, the worst thing that somebody can tell you in those situations is no. For me, like no was just kind of like, it was such a damaging word for me. You know what I'm saying? Because like, no was just like, all right, it wasn't just no, try again later. For me, it felt like, no, you're not good enough.
Yeah. Now when you got into Winthrop and you kind of came through that situation where no, did that ever cripple you at Winthrop at any time? Like just create like fear or anxiety, anything like that?
I mean, there were instances where like I would run into situations where I was like, all right, I didn't get these internships. What am I going to do? Like, and even with my first situation, like when I actually first started working with the T&D, my first stint was like right after my sophomore year. And it was kind of an internship, but it kind of wasn't. So I first started, I wrote a couple columns, and Lee Harder, who was the editor at the time, Democrat, he was like, you know what, we're going to, give you some more things to do. So they sent me out to American Legion Baseball, and it really didn't it was more of a part-time job than it was an internship. Mm-hmm. So, but like the ones that I had gone after, like as a senior and as an upperclassman, when I didn't get into those, I was just like, okay, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do. Because a lot of times, from what I was told by my advisor, people are looking for these internships. They want you to be able to have this experience so that, you can get your foot in the door in other places. And so without me having that, I was a little nervous about, what was going to be next for me, because I really had no idea what the next step was.
That is a scary situation. Now let me ask you something. You graduate from Winthrop and you're getting ready to go out. What was the anxiety like then, trying to find that job in journalism or try to find that one, like what was going through your mind then?
Well, it's funny because like at the time, like I was working at Blockbuster and I was I was basically like slinging videos at the time because that was my part-time job. That was what I was doing to kind of, make sure I had a little extra money on the side to do whatever I wanted to do while I was in Rock Hill. And so as I'm approaching graduation, I'm like, I don't have internships. I don't have, any of that experience. And I wanted to stay in Charlotte. I wanted to stay in that area just because I knew that, that market was just, there was so many good opportunities that were coming to that market. As a matter of fact, like right around that time I was getting ready to graduate, ESPN was making their Charlotte campus. Wow. So like I wanted to be a part of that. Like I knew I was like right out of the gate, like that's the dream job. That's what I want, to be able to take part in that. And then like when they were finally like slowly but surely letting out some of the details of what the Charlotte campus was going to be doing, I was like, man, this is right up my wheelhouse. I want to do all of this stuff. But, when I applied for those jobs, they were like, well, we're looking for somebody with more experience. We're looking for somebody who has this or has that. And I didn't qualify for that. So I was really nervous because I was like, I don't want to go home, but I don't want to like not have the job that I want at the same time. And I didn't, I wanted to, get out of college and immediately have the things that I wanted. And it didn't work out that way. But, things happen for a reason, obviously. For me, I'm glad that even though I didn't get the opportunities that I was, I'd been looking forward to, I'm glad that they worked out the way they did.
Okay. And that's something definitely I can relate to, is just sometimes one door is closed and then you move later down the line and another door opens and then you be like, well, now I see why that door didn't open then. All right. So tell me what's going through your mind while you're working, in Orangeburg, and at that time, were they paying you or?
You mean when I first started when I was an underclassman?
Yeah, when you first started working with the TND. Okay,
so like when I first started, like when I was a sophomore, when I came and I was working part-time, they did pay me. It was like a little stipend, basically. Okay. I'd fill out a little at that point, like, most cases you may fill out, a timesheet or you fill out some paperwork and they basically pay you for the work that you've done, per story, basically. But for me, I was literally filling out a timesheet, which was, for me, that was kind of unheard of because I was like, I don't even have a degree at this point. Why am I getting a timesheet? But, I didn't argue with it. I was there for the experience. And so, when I was going back to school that summer, they had a going away, which was, again, odd because, you don't do that for interns. It's like, we're glad that you're here. We're looking forward to seeing what you do in the future. And my editor, he was like, Mr. Harder said, I just want you to know you've done tremendous work here. The folks in the neighborhood, the folks in the community, they know who you are. They've been buying papers and the feedback has it's been phenomenal. If you ever need a job, come back, let us know. We'll have a desk waiting for you. I didn't take that seriously. And, because like people say things, they're like, all right, well, we'll see. And so, after I'd done all this applying for jobs in Charlotte, I was like, I was really reluctant to come back home because I was like, I don't want to come home. I don't want to have to live with my family. I don't want to have to do a lot of these things. I want to be able to, stand on my own 2 feet, do a lot of things that, that most college folks do after they get out, And, lo and behold, I'm sitting there and I'm applying for these jobs and an opening at the T&D comes up, sports reporter. And I was like, all right, well, I'll give it a shot. We'll see what happens. And literally the next day, Lee Harder calls me. He's like, I don't need to interview you. I don't need any of your, anything that you need to do. I don't need any writing samples. That when you're ready to come in, come see me. I got a desk waiting for you. And that's how it happened.
Let me ask something. When you took the job at the T&D, how did that help shape you as a journalist now? Like, what were some of the things when you look back on it, you can say, this is where I kind of sunk some of my teeth in and learned some things that I probably wouldn't learn anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you're a journalist at a paper in the city of Orangeburg, I mean, one of the things you have to do is you have to know people. You have to know people, and you have to like be able to like talk with folks, and cultivate sources. And even in those situations, I mean, that's something that you're always going to have to do in any shop as a journalist. But for me, the other thing was, like as a sports reporter, you're not always, most people don't really think that, being a sports reporter is tough, but it can be tough at times, because there are instances where you may run into a situation where a coach may not like what your paper wrote, or may not like something you wrote, may not like how you phrase something, and they may not want to work with you. It honestly, I think being in Orangeburg helped me kind of realize that there are a lot of instances as a journalist, you also have to be kind of, you have to be a person who's, kind of skilled at conflict resolution, because if you want certain stories, if you want certain sources, you got to be able to work with people. You got to be able to find some happy medium to work with somebody, even if they may not like what you wrote, or something that your colleague wrote, anything like that, and you have to work with folks. I don't know if I get that at WIS. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if I get that at the USA Today network, because these are bigger places. These are bigger brands. You work with a different set of people. So I think among those things, just being able to, cultivate my people skills even more as a journalist and as a person, at a paper like the TND, like helped me tremendously moving forward.
That's interesting, because even in coaching, a reporter has the power. They can actually get you fired
100%
just by what they write. And when you think about it, you're in a hometown in a place where people and you know them personally. That has to be kind of tough, because now you got to write an article, and not be, you have to state the facts of what you saw.
Right.
But at the same time, I know this person, and I know that this could probably get this person fired or take food out of his family's mouth. I know him, but then I have an obligation to write. So explain that as far as, how do you battle with that, or how do you fix that? What do you do?
Well, I mean, obviously, like being from Calhoun County, like one of the schools that we covered at the TND was Calhoun County. That's a hard thing to do, like for me, like initially, because I was like, man, I feel like I'm too close to the story. I know these people, I don't want it to come off like, I'm not telling the story the way people see it. But that's part of it, man. Like you have to, as a journalist, you have to give your unbiased account of what happened in whatever it is that you're covering. You can't just, you can't slant it. You're not supposed to slant it certain ways to make it look like, well, I'm looking out for this person because I know them, because this is my hometown. Those things, I mean, you can't be taken seriously as a reporter, if you don't call these things down the middle. And again, like, being from the area, a lot of folks would be like, well, I know you, I know your family, why would you write this like this? And I was like, well, this is how it happened, and if I had ever found myself to be in a situation where I had incorrectly reported something, then I'd own up to it. I'd own up to it, and I'd come back and we'd write another story. Maybe not necessarily a correction, because if anybody will tell you, like the last thing any journalism outlet wants to do is issue a correction. Mm-hmm. But if there's a way to fix the situation, then by all means, I'm happy to do it as a reporter. But it's difficult in that situation, because you want to be able to tell the story properly, but you also want to be able to, make the folks that you deal with on a regular basis proud to know that, you're representing them, you're working with them, and they can trust you as a reporter.
I want to dive a little bit deeper into that, because I'm thinking about, I'm trying to put myself in your position, being in my hometown, and I got to write an article about, my school, and it's a small town, so it's not like we know how it is here. We don't have a lot of major jobs. If you're not in education, I mean, you're not making a lot of money.
Right.
But you're working in, I guess the plant but education is just big business here.
Mm-hmm.
You write a story, then the next day you got to get up and you got to go through town. I mean, did you ever get in any kind of controversy situations where you had to kind of like, okay, man, I got really, because you talk about conflict resolution.
There are a couple. There are a couple situations where my reporting may have rubbed coaches the wrong way. There's one situation. I won't name the coach and I won't name the school, but there's one situation where I'd actually like gotten a call from a source, and they were saying, well, such and such is going to be fired. We've gotten that information from the board. They're gonna let him go. And I was like, are you sure about this? Not that I needed him to kind of correct it for me, because I mean, this person was really close to the situation.
Yeah.
I mean, from the standpoint of, they're in the school, they know the board, all of this information.
Mm-hmm.
So we went with it. And we published it, and the next day I literally, like, it was like, for me, I got that call maybe like at 9 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And it was the coach. And he was like, where did you get that information? Who told you that? And I was like, well, coach, I can't just give up my sources like that.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, I don't know where you got it from, but I hope you got a good lawyer. And he hung up.
Ooh. Wow.
And as a young reporter, I'm like,
I'm in trouble.
I was like, what just happened? Like, what just happened? I called, like, I didn't even call my editor. I called my homeboy. I was like, yo, I think I'm about to be sued. And he was like, what happened? And I explained the situation to him. He was like, man, I don't think anything gonna happen, but good luck if that happens. And like, for the whole day, like, I had just thought about it. I was like, there's no way that, like, I had gotten myself into this. And I finally got into work, and I told my editor what happened. He was like, yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. If your source is spot on, we've attributed that information to that source. It's not like you said it, so we've attributed it to that source. I wouldn't worry about it. And I didn't hear from that guy for a while. I didn't hear from that coach for a while. And it turned out, the information was accurate. He, went on about his business. And I've seen him a couple times. We've I guess buried the hatchet, so to speak. But there are instances where, people, like I said, people are not happy sometimes with the things that come out in the news, and that's not necessary. I think part of that is because it didn't come directly from them.
Yeah.
A lot of times, you run into coaches that want to control the narrative about their program or about their career or, whatever. And, 9 times out of 10, if it's something like a situation where it's their program, sure, they can control that narrative. But if it's as far as their career goes, they may not always be able to control that narrative. That's not something you can do if you're under a board, under an athletic director, those type of things. But thankfully, I haven't had too many of those situations, but that was probably
have you ever experienced where a lot of people kind of like nervous when you come around, or they kind of get quiet, or they don't say much? Have you ever gone through that before?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, you have kids and coaches that are like, I'm not going to say much. They don't say much because, they're nervous. They don't want to look stupid on TV. They don't want to sound stupid in the newspaper. You have situations like that. And I've told, when I first started, I always told like those folks, like even coaches who are not used to being interviewed. I'm like, look, man, don't think of this. Don't think of this as anything major. I would tell the coaches who got nervous, look, this is just me and you talking. The only difference is I got this recorder and I do need to write what you tell me. We'll clear it up. But, at this point, you don't need to be nervous about, talking to me. And the same thing goes for kids. Like I would tell kids all the time, I'm like, hey, man, look, you don't need to be nervous. I'm not that much older than you. This is your Sports Center moment. Just treat it as such. You know what I'm saying? Like you treat it like this is your chance to be on ESPN. I mean, just, be smart about what you say, because obviously, one, you don't want to say anything crazy that'll get you in trouble with your coaches. You don't want to say anything crazy that'll provide bulletin board material for teams you're playing this week. Just, be humble, but at the same time, just, speak your truth.
So now you're working at the TND, and then you get the call to go to WS. What went through your mind when you made that trend? Like, what was it like when you got that call?
Honestly, like I was elated. Honestly, I'd had folks always come to me and tell me, if you work at WIS, you can work anywhere. It's the springboard to go wherever you want to go. And like again, like I'm the type of person, like I need to see it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And I've seen like a couple examples. Obviously, everybody knows Craig Melvin. Craig worked at WIS and he works at the Today Show now. There are people who have gone on from WIS and they've done well for themselves.
Wow.
But I didn't know that personally. Like I needed to see it. So when I finally gotten the job, I was excited because one, that meant that I was no longer having to drive from Columbia to Orangeburg every day, because I had just gotten married and I was just, driving literally from Northeast Columbia to Orangeburg every day, plus wherever it is that I had to, cover. So if there was a game at Lake Mary, and that there's no company car for me, like there's, that's gas money. So, but no, it was one of the more exciting phone calls that I'd ever gotten, because I'd gotten it while I was on I-77. I was on my way to Orangeburg, and I literally pulled over and like I practically like just. I was dancing in my car, jumping for joy. It's a moment. It's a moment because like you go from being like this small town reporter to working for a major news organization that, one, is in the capital city of your state, and two, and a lot of people don't know this, but like WIS is like one of the top NBC affiliates in the country. So to have that opportunity was just like, it was mind-boggling. Like I was literally pinching myself the whole day. Like I got this job. This is unreal.
Wow. Did they ever let you know how they noticed you? Like, because I know Orangeburg, and I know how small Orangeburg is. Mm-hmm. So how did they? Was it somehow? Did you just apply and just say, "Hey, see what happens," or what?
Well, I applied, and again, this goes back to like, the application process that we had talked about earlier. That was my second time applying, because the first time I applied, I'd applied and I didn't hear back. Literally, like nobody called me back. And I was as patient as I possibly could be, and I was like, it's been months, I haven't heard anything. So I checked in. I was like, hey, thank you for the opportunity to come in and interview, but I was just checking to see exactly like what's the status of the job. And he was like, oh, we filled that job. And I was like, well, man, 3 months had gone by and I didn't know. But the second time I'd gotten the opportunity to interview, it was a slightly different role. And I just applied. There wasn't anybody that had actually like seen any of my work or anything at that moment. But there were people who like knew I applied within the building. And, they would follow me on social media. Like they were following me on Twitter, and they were following me on Instagram, and they were following me on Facebook. And they were like, this kid's pretty good.
Wow. That's pretty good. So now as you're working through WIS, what was that experience like? And what did you learn from there that also helped build on your journalist at being a journalist now?
One of the things that I got to give credit where credit is due is talking to folks like Rick Henry and Judy Gatson. Honestly, like those two instilled so much confidence in me to do things that honestly I never thought I'd be able to do. When I first got there, like I think it was within the first year, my assistant news director, she pulled me into the office. She was like, listen, I love the way you write. You tell a story like really like nobody else in this building. how would you feel about going on TV? And I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I've been a print reporter for 7 years. Like I wouldn't know the first thing about being on TV. I don't want to look crazy on TV. I don't want to do any of that. And she was like, okay. And so maybe like a couple years later, Rick had come to me. He was like, listen, you're a same thing. You're a great storyteller. We got to find a way to get you on TV. And it wasn't this time. He wasn't asking. He was saying, we're going to put you on TV.
Wow.
And so I was like, well, Rick, I don't know about this. He's like, listen, we're going to walk you through it. We're going to help you. We're going to groom you to be a reporter. I know that you're nervous about it, but the only way you're actually going to be able to get past that is if you do it.
Yeah.
And so like, I would have a few like live shots and stuff that I'd done. And in the process of me doing them, I talked to Judy, and Judy was giving me pointers on things to do to, be a better, have a better presence on air, and, how to be able to connect with viewers and that sort of thing. I mean, with those two constantly like just being in my ear and giving me advice, like I would not be remotely close to the type of reporter I am today, because the two things I learned from them was just to be confident and to never settle for answers. At that point, it's just like, some young reporters, they'll ask a question and they'll settle for whatever answer comes out, even if your interviewee doesn't answer the question. Sometimes you got to push back and you got to ask questions, just to kind of, flesh out the answer and get more detail. So those two, to me, man, like they were instrumental in me being who I am today.
Wow, that's pretty good. So now, TND, WIS. Now, how many years had gone by between those two jobs?
So I'd worked at the TND for 7 years. It was the job that I got right out of college, and I'd gotten the job at WIS in 2014. Wow. And May would have been my 7th year there.
Wow. So we're looking at 7, and then you got the job 2014, 6. So that's what, about 13
mm-hmm.
years?
Yep.
Okay. 13 years in a span, and now you get a call from US Today Network.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on now?
So like it's funny because like I was looking for I'd been looking for a slightly different challenge, not necessarily something that would take me away from what I was doing, because I enjoyed the work that I did at WIS. I got an opportunity to do so many different things that I never really thought were possible. College football championships, Final Fours, the Southern 500 in Darlington, the All-Star game, the NBA All-Star game. There are so many different opportunities that I had. I didn't want to let that go, but I still wanted to be able to like do certain things, to be able to cover big events, to be able to share big news, that sort of thing. And so it actually turned out that my manager now, she used to work for our parent company that owns WIS. And, she had gotten in contact with a couple of my old managers, and they were looking for folks at the USA Today Network. And she was like, do you know anybody? And my previous manager was like, hey, give Emery a call. And, she knew that, some of my work, because some of the work that I did for our station ultimately got shared nationally through their hub. So she gave me a call probably like a few weeks ago, and she's like, hey, listen, this is the situation. This is what we're doing. I want you to join the team. And like, to turn down the USA Today Network, like that's unheard of. Like that's still national news, man. It doesn't matter whether you're actually working for like the national paper itself. To actually be under that same umbrella, like, is an opportunity that's just once in a lifetime.
Wow. And you got recommended, like, because I heard you say like she was asking about somebody around, and then they recommended you to her.
Yep, that's exactly what happened. My manager, shout out to Tanita Gaither. she was talking to my manager, and she said, hey, um, I'm looking for folks, who can you recommend? And she's like, oh, well, um, I know a guy in Colombia. He'd be great for what you're doing. And like not long after that, like I was getting messages on Twitter like, hey, I want you to join this. I want you to join our team. This is what we're doing. Just a full breakdown of everything. And I mean, like like the whole thing happened so fast. Like from the first time that I gotten that first message, maybe like 2 days later, I was already doing a writing test to actually like begin the hiring process. It was unreal.
It's amazing when I listen to that you tell your story. So many times, I tell kids, I would tell them all through, athletics. I would say, if you just play and give everything you all, that somebody's going to find you. Somebody's going to see you. And I'm listening to you tell it's almost like you're telling the exact story that, 7 years here. Then from 2014, 6 years here. And I just did what I did my job. I did it with excellence, and I did it with my heart into it, and I gave it everything I got. And people begin to notice that. And when somebody else, word of mouth, say, hey, this is the person you want to go after. And I tell people all the time, you don't have to brown nose for anything. You just got to do what you do, but do it with excellence. Just give it everything you got. And then something will happen. I don't know when it's going to happen, but if you don't quit and you keep going, something's going to happen. And I mean, just to listen to you tell your story, I mean, that's inspirational right there. Now, let me ask you, what would you tell, what last words would you leave to a class of journalists coming out of college that they only have one job, and but they want to be on ESPN, they want to be at the USA, they want to be at this network? What would be your words of inspiration to them right now?
I would say, like, honestly, like it's one of my favorite sayings. It's kind of like derived from Bill Belichick's "Do Your Job." One of my favorite sayings is do the work.
Wow.
If you go out and you just do your part and you just consistently do it well, like, I know that, every job is not going to be fun. People always say, you never work a day in your life if you do what you love. And to some degree that's true, but sometimes, there are days where it's work, man. Like people don't realize that, just because, like, these reporters go out to these big events, these national championships, these all-star games, they're not just hanging out. That's work. People ask all the time, like, hey, can I get a press pass to go to the South Carolina game or, hang out with you guys? And I'm like, listen, that's a 14-hour day for us. That's a 14-hour day for us. We get there, we watch the game, we're covering the game, and then, when everybody else goes home, we're still there because we're working on stuff for the 6 o'clock show. We're working on stuff for the 11 o'clock show. Do the work. Just constantly go out and do the things that you've been asked to do, because the thing is, like, you just never know who's reading your stuff. You never know who's watching. You never know who's going to pick up, that newspaper and say, wow, this guy can really write. This girl can really write. It's not always going to be easy to do the work. It's not always going to be easy to put your heart into it every day. And that's perfectly fine. You're human. You can't do that every day, but if you just consistently do the work, if you consistently just go out and say, I want to do whatever it is that I can, one, to make sure that my product is one of the best out there, regardless of who else covered it, regardless of who else says anything about it. At the end of the day, if I've done everything that I can to make sure that what I've put out is the best that I've put out day in and day out, somebody's going to see it. Somebody's going to notice it, and somebody's going to say, wow, that work ethic is something that, we'd like to have in our company. That work ethic could be valuable here, and it could elevate you. You just don't know, like those opportunities, they don't just fall in people's laps just because, they're pretty, or they know people. I mean, sure, that it may happen sometimes, but 9 times out of 10, those people who just went out and did the work, those are the ones that they'll get noticed, and they're able to go on and do major things with their careers.
Wow. Now, if any of these journalists want to follow you or get in touch with you, like what's the best way of getting in touch with you?
You can follow me on Instagram or on Twitter. Emery Glover 17, EMERYGLOVER 17. You can follow me on Facebook. I have a page on Facebook that I'll get with you. Those are I'm usually on social media. Like those are my primary outlets, man. I'm usually on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram somewhere, just kind of informing the people of what's going on.
Okay. Any public speaking or any books you got coming up?
I got no books. I got no books. I haven't really done public speaking. Like I think that's not something I've been asked. Well, I've been asked to do it, but I'm not in a position to do it right now. But I've done school shadow days, and I've done the tours for for the station. I've done a lot of that, but no, I've not been asked to like host anything or nothing major like that, man. I'm trying to stay low key and just do the job, man.
Well, again, man, I want to thank you for coming on the GU Mentality podcast, and it's really been a pleasure for me just watching your career and watch as you grow. Even though, because you've interviewed me several times, but I always like to follow people and just watch careers as they go from here to here to here to here, because I mean, I just like to see that. It's just something about it I enjoy seeing it, and I like to hear. I wanted to create a platform where people could tell their stories, and I'm glad you came on the GU Mentality podcast to tell your story. And for anybody out there that if you want to get into journalism or whatever you want to do, one thing you got to take from this is going to take consistency. This is Chris Carter with GU Mentality Podcast. I'm out.